Morning. So my kids are kind of at the peak activity ages right now. So pretty much every night, probably like a lot of you, I'm running around. I'm either dropping somebody off or picking somebody up. So last night I'm sitting in the parking lot uh, while my eighth graders at swim practice, and a radio story comes on the radio about LIDAR and how archaeologists, I think, did you hear that? Yeah, I think this just happened. Archaeologists have discovered, I think almost by accident, a 30,000 to 50,000 person city that was inhabited as part of the Mayan civilization. So LIDAR, it's like radar, I guess, but with lasers. And people come to AI from all sorts of backgrounds, so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a geophysicist, somebody in here trained as a geologist. Hands, geology people. Okay, maybe not. But anyway, as I started thinking about it, and I was thinking about the talk that I was given this morning, and this project that we did at SSA. So anyway, that metaphor, I might try to come back. So a big effort for the commissioner has been to, one of his major goals has been to address wait times and the 800 number. To do that, the agency really needed to get a better understanding of workflows, why people are calling, what people are calling about. I used to work on a help desk about 20 years ago, and one of the first things we did was we logged the issue, what the call was about. So I was a little bit surprised, I guess, when I started this project that kind of data wasn't readily available, or at least not at scale. And I think there are a lot of different reasons for that. But anyway, that was our relatively small team. It was a cross-component effort. But that's what we were tasked with, was just providing some insights. Didn't know about call traffic. So I thought, in kind of the limited amount of time that I have this morning, I thought maybe the best way that I could talk about this is just by sharing about half a dozen reflections about different things that we learned throughout the project. So first, the biggest win, and this is, I think everybody in here has some experience with with AI, so this might not be a surprise to this crowd, but I was I'm not a person that has a deep background in AI. I'm a person that's, done different kinds of data analysis and policy analysis for 20 years. So I kind of went into this project, with an open mind, but not sure what kind of results we were going to get. I was pretty surprised by I was probably the skeptic on the team, and I was surprised by the quality, the ability of the large language model to classify what some of these calls were about, especially some of our older transcripts, which that audio transcription technology has come a long way, but some of our older transcripts were pretty pretty rough. That provided some entertainment value for us as we were looking at some of these transcripts. If you've ever sort of watched bad lip reading videos or anything, some funny things come out. But that's not very helpful if you're trying, on a project where you're trying to classify or provide insights on these things. So anyway, I was pretty impressed. And, we looked at some of the older transcripts that we had. We looked at newer transcripts, and the LLM pretty reliably, it comes up with about the same distribution of call topics regardless of the quality of transcripts that it's looking at. So that, that kind of gave us a warm and fuzzy feeling about what it was doing. It was pretty consistent across these different call platforms and quality. So anyway, that was probably the biggest win, I think. Biggest challenge, probably not a big surprise to anybody who's tasked with providing insights, but making the data actionable. And people throw that word actionable around a lot. I think in this context, there are 2 points that I want to make about it. One is close collaboration with the subject matter experts. Kind of a no-brainer. I mean, my teams, we're statisticians and operations research analysts, even some economists, folks like that, pretty diverse background. We're not the people taking the calls or even supervising the people taking the calls. So, we have a lot of assumptions about what the questions are, but without working closely with those subject matter experts, our assumptions can be wrong. The other point I wanted to make about it, about making results actionable, is just a few words about entity modeling, I guess I would call it. So, when you're working with a large language model, a lot of what you're doing is about classification. You're basically describing. It's a description exercise. You want to classify things. You want to take 80 million transcripts and put that into some digestible, aggregated visual often. So I think it helps, rather than just rushing in, and of course we rushed into it anyway, but but rather than rushing in and just generating some prompts to try to get the model to give you sort of a manageable number of call topics, I really think if I was going to start over again from scratch, I would spend more time up front just kind of brainstorming or kind of having a thought exercise about what are the let's break up this basic unit of information, a conversation. Let's break that up into its component parts. So so there might be the call duration, the reason why somebody called the 800 number. Anybody have any? You could just throw them out if anybody has any other thoughts on what comprises a conversation, a phone conversation. Pardon me? Yeah, perfect. So sentiment analysis, that's a big one. And for our purposes, we also wanted to have some insight into the outcome of the call. What was the customer, where did the workflow go? Did it get routed to a processing center? Did it get routed to a field office? Because all these things have implications for staffing and how you get in front of these things. So just and that's something that is just good. It just kind of makes good analytical sense. Getting a little philosophical maybe, but if you want to know something, it kind of makes sense to start with what is it that we're analyzing? I mean, what are the parts that make it up? And that just makes sense whether you're working with an AI tool or not. But anyway, both of those things that help make the data actionable, working closely with the SMEs, and then just modeling what it is that you're trying to understand. They sound like obvious things, but I feel like we kind of rushed past those a little bit, and I think most people do. They're kind of the things that we kind of take for granted. So a little bit of a lesson learned there. The biggest surprise from the project, for me anyway, and maybe I should have seen this coming, but was the amount of spin-off requests. So we were a small team doing kind of like a technology incubation or a little pilot project. This was exploratory. We just wanted to see what can a large language model tell us about this large volume of calls. And word started to get around, and we would start to get requests. Our little team would get requests for things. A lot of interest in chatbots, or as we started calling them, policy bots, to kind of help different parts of the agency navigate policy. And there's a lot of complicated policy references, for SSA's programs. Also, one thing that surprised me that I didn't see coming was the amount of requests that we started to get to help do survey analysis. So, we're a big government agency. We love surveys. We survey our own staff. We survey the public, all kinds of survey data out there, and a lot of it is free text. I used to work in higher education policy, and so there were some different teams I used to be on. We would do a lot of survey analysis, but and we had tools for it that so I was a little bit surprised at how many people had all this survey data but didn't have a tool that any kind of NLP tool that was readily available to identify common themes in that free text. So we started getting into a lot of spin-off requests like that, and so that was a little bit of a surprise to me. But I guess the lesson there is just, and this is kind of the process that we're going through now, is working with our office of the CIO and working across the agency to kind of, when you think about AI governance, you think about things like maybe bias assessment and mitigation and privacy. Maybe there's a definition of AI governance that also involves things like prioritizing work, or who is going to do what, at the agency, because you have kind of a small team like ours can only do so many of these things, and we've identified a need out there that can be met with the help of an LLM. So we're working now to kind of figure out how to do that at scale, for the agency without, our little team kind of treading water on all these things. So that was the biggest surprise. Biggest lesson learned. I mean, I guess all of these are lesson learns, but adaptability. I called it adaptability. I guess this wasn't a surprise. I mean, although, one curveball that came at us was halfway through the project. The call platform that we were working with the agency, the commissioner had prioritized a change in the underlying call platform, and so we had to kind of, our ETL pipeline, the way we were obtaining and sampling call transcript data and eventually we automated a dashboard on top of that. But all of that had to change because the source of the data changed. We had to point to different things. That's not, I mean, that happened more quickly than we expected because it was a big priority for the agency. But maybe, it's not a surprise that things change. But, other kinds of things like just leadership changes, focus changes, depending on what big agencies are facing the agency at any moment. And then things like being able to present trend data and to provide insights into seasonality. I'm kind of lumping all of these things under adaptability, but whatever kind of data pipeline you develop and whatever, dashboards or reports that you put on top of it, it needs to be flexible enough, because the questions that are being asked today are not the questions that are going to be asked next week or a month from now, and you want to be able to identify issues as they're arising. So if there's a sudden spike, if you have some decent trend data in the dashboard and all of a sudden there's, if just hypothetically speaking, if most of the time tax requests for tax forms account for like 4% of the calls, and then all of a sudden they're accounting for 12% of the calls, something's going on, and that's the kind of thing you want to be able to detect with trend data. Biggest opportunity for improvement, maybe no big surprise, but data integration. It's great to have information about the conversations from the LLM, but if you can integrate that with call duration, the kinds of programs and claims that callers are working with, all kinds of other characteristics, and that just takes time and effort. It has to be an agency priority. And then last thing, looking ahead, I think I just want to come back as I wrap up here, just to come back for a minute to that LiDAR example. And in a lot of the other presentations, I know there was interest in what are analysts worried about what their role is going to be in a future where AI is embedded in a lot of other tools. And the way that I think about it with that archaeology metaphor is when the archaeologists found this city of 30 to 50,000 people, that created a lot more interesting work for them to do, a lot of higher order questions. So if an LLM lets a team like ours not have to spend so much time sifting through large amounts of data, we can spend more time kind of addressing the more interesting questions, posing hypotheses and things like that. So if anything, I see it creating more opportunities rather than leaving a team like ours without anything to do. Thank you.